writing by a human being, you learn something about his circumstances. So if you check the Vedas, you see that in the earlier period, they have carts drawn by bullocks. And in the later period, they have swift chariots drawn by horses. But they never drive automobiles. They also don't live in caves. They don't use prehistoric stone axes and stuff like that. I mean, you can perfectly deduce that they lived not in the Stone Age and not in the modern age either. There are no polar bears, no penguins, no kangaroos, and so on. So you can perfectly deduce, no, they did not live in the Arctic, they did not live on the South Pole, they did not live in Australia, and so on. So if you take the flora and fauna, names of rivers and so on, it's clear that they lived in northwest India. So
what about the any connection to Harappa Saraswati civilization? There's always been a problem in Indian history.
well, yes, of course. You read very many people who still quote textbooks from the 50s or so, where they say, oh, you see, the Harappan cities were completely different from the Vedic culture and so on. That's seriously obsolete. Like the great historian, the most important historian in India, B.B. Lal, he used to support the Aryan invasion theory in the beginning. In fact, he was for a long time the only archaeologist who was cited by Indo-Europeanists in support of the Aryan invasion theory. But he changed his mind around 1990, when many people changed their minds because there was new evidence. So the American archaeologists Dion Lichtenstein and Jim Sheffer showed archaeologically that there is no trace of an Aryan invasion in India. Not militarily.
Yeah, but
that would easily have left traces, but not in material culture either. You don't see, a trail of people somewhere in Siberia who come to Afghanistan and then ultimately Punjab and so on, deeper into India, and who have the same material culture, the same burial practices, whatever. That's not there. The Vedas give testimony of the world in which they were written or composed, orally composed, but given a very fixed form that was preserved for 3,000-4,000 years. So they were composed in a specific situation in northwest India. That's absolutely certain. And then some events, a few localized and well-timed events, also are described in it, not because they have the job of writing history, but because the religious sentiments that they express are linked to events in real life. You see, some events in real life you have to thank the gods for. If you become a father for the first time, you feel very grateful and happy and so on. So you write a hymn to the gods about it. And at the same time, it gives testimony of this birth of this real human being. And so the Battle of the Ten Kings, of course, is about a real war, a battle that has genuinely happened.
Yeah, shaped maybe the history of the world.
Well, it gives a very sketchy description of the war. You can deduce a few things. You can certainly deduce the outcome.
Yeah, like the Persians and then Sakas.
Yes, so the Iranian tribes, that's the 10 tribes, they get defeated and they get chased away. And so they move mostly to Afghanistan, which becomes the Iranian heartland for a number of centuries. A number of events are described. There is one battle that is actually described both in the Vedas and in the Avesta. You see, there you have confirmation. And like what really happens when you have two descriptions of the same event, they are recognizably about the same event, but they have a different bias. And here, certainly, because the two sides are enemies on the battlefield, right? But still, they clearly describe a battle with the same generals on both sides. So this is clearly historical. And, that ought not to surprise anyone. Indeed, you see, in the 19th century, people used the Rig Veda as a source of bad history. What they intended to be good history, but because of wrong translations, it was not so good. Like we talked about the Battle of the Ten Kings. So the Battle of the Ten Kings are about a battle that takes place on the banks of the river Ravi, or in those days Parushni. And it describes the troops coming from the next river, the river next to the west, which is the Asikni or the Chenab. And so Asikni means black. It's called the Black River. And so therefrom you get in the 19th century this translations who say, oh, this is the black people. Yeah, this is the proof, the white Aryans are fighting the black Aboriginals. Now, actually, there's nothing particularly aboriginal about them. They come from the West, whereas in the Aryan invasion theory, it is the invaders who come from the West. Anyway, so that was not a good translation, but it has remained popular, and very many people still quote it or still assume it. Though the best, professional translators like Jamieson and Brereton, who have published the last extant English translation in 2014. They clearly take distance from this skin color interpretation. Stellar positions are used for timing, and in the Vedas you do have a few examples like that. A few where we can't really use them for timing. Though in those days, you see, people probably knew which event they refer to. Like there are some descriptions of lunar eclipses or solar eclipses. And so these happen regularly. But so, one may have been quite spectacular, and everybody who lived at the time remembered this and could time events in his life. Oh, this was before this big eclipse or after. And so for them, you see, it meant something in terms of time reckoning, but that has long been forgotten. There are other data, however, that do indicate a specific time, namely where the position of stars is correlated with the position of the seasons, of the solstice axis and the equinox axis. So the Vedas does not have much of it. There's related literature in the Brahmanas, where you have a few of these indications. The most important consequential one, I think, is the passage of the star Regulus, or Magha, the heart of the lion, past the solstice axis, which happened about 4,300 years ago, so 2,300 BC. Okay, so now it is in the first degree of Virgo in the tropical zodiac, and so we have to go back to 0 of Cancer, which is the summer solstice. So that is about 4,300 years. And this is a very important thing. It also helps in dating your next point of interest, namely the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
And it so happens that capable archaeoastronomers like Ashok Bhatnagar and Jijit Nadumuri Ravi do determine the date, or at least the year of the Kurukshetra battle in 1793 BCE. That is about 500 years after this passage of Regulus past the solstice axis. So yes, you see, archaeoastronomy is very useful.